Hi, my name is Jose Cossa. I'm a professor here at Vanderbilt at Peabody College, Department of Leadership, Policy, and Organizations. And original from Mozambique, and so I'm here teaching a course that really deals with truth-telling, stories from the front lines, which in itself really characterizes what's going to happen in this course. We'll be talking about, where how people conceptualize uh, all these issues of race and racial justice from various kinds of perspectives other than just the one perspective that we know. And so hopefully, we have students from different backgrounds, so hopefully this is going to cover all that. But so my course, today's session, for instance, we talked about Ubuntu and humanism, that as a foundation to really beginning to introduce the concept of racial justice, because you cannot talk about racial justice without understanding this notion of personhood. And so I contrast Ubuntu with humanism because each one of them offers a different perspective, which is often misunderstood as being equal. Many people have equated Ubuntu to humanism. Now, Ubuntu, the motto in Ubuntu, this is an African-derived concept that defines the human. And the motto is Umuntu Ngumuntu Ngabantu, or in Sesotho would be Motokimoto Kabatu, which is a person unto persons, literally translated. Now, there's other instances when we will use the word others, say person to person unto others, but I'm trying to really steer away from that because in Ubuntu concept, and literally, Bantu means people, so or persons, and so in Ubuntu concept, really there is no other, there's no othering, and all these kinds of things. So we're going to try to do away with that kind of language by using it as a person to persons, and so that in contrast to humanism, which centers really in the mind, the brain, as what defines human, and that's where we then talk about the syllogism of Descartes, which is the whole idea of cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, in which Descartes talks about the first principle of philosophy, that this is how he realizes his existence through thinking. The fact that he thinks, he realizes that then he exists. So we then make this this distinction very clear, that they are incompatible understandings of human, or perceptions of human. So the African-derived concept Ubuntu, which I don't call it an African concept because it's not owned by Africa, and it was never intended to be owned by Africans, because there's no sense. The sense of individual ownership is not. It would be against this very same principle. So it's an African-derived. It comes from Africa, but it's to the world. And then this whole African-derived concept of personhood becomes very critical as really a defiance or a defying definition of human in a modernity and humanist context. So we live in a world where modernity dominates. So we're going to talk about modernity. We're going to define that. We're going to introduce the students to this because it's important to realize that all the humanism and modernity and the influences of Western civilization really have a big impact on our perception of personhood, and so offer alternatives as Ubuntu is an alternative, and see how where that goes. And so we will be problematizing some of these things. We'll be conversing, having conversations around Ubuntu humanism, and then we'll move on to things like cosmopolitanism, and we will talk about classical cosmopolitanism, this idea of planetary conviviality being cosmopolitanism has been really catching up, and a lot of people talk about this. But there's a distinction in cosmopolitanism that I wish to make in this class, which would be the classical cosmopolitanism, which really is very much a modernity-infused perception of what that is, this planetary conviviality, versus versus a critical cosmopolitanism, which is kind of a touch of opposition or pushing modernity a little bit and challenging modernity's perception of cosmopolitanism. And so, and then I'll talk about I'll introduce something that I would call the Cosmo-uBuntu, which is really this other perception or other way of looking at this planetary conviviality if we're defining the human from the perspective of Ubuntu. So yeah, this is very much what we are going to be doing. So understanding that these are foundational aspects, unless we have clarity on these perceptions of human, of personhood, there is no way we can have or start a conversation about racism or racial justice. So that's why I want to engage these particular paradigms first. Thank you.